That message hit me harder than I expected. I stared at my phone in the dim glow of our bedroom, listening to the quiet hum of the ceiling fan as if it could drown out the sudden tightness in my chest. It wasn't the words themselves that bothered me. It was the timing, the tone, and the silence that followed. My wife, Emily, had never sent a message like that in all the years we'd been together. She always let me know when she was staying late at work, always explained if something kept her from coming home. But this was cold, direct, almost rehearsed. And yet, I refused to jump to the worst conclusions. I wasn't going to let paranoia or anger control me. Instead, I took a breath, looked around the quiet house, and decided to respond with a single photo that would change everything. But before I tell you about that photo, you need to understand how we reached this moment. A moment shaped not by love or betrayal, but by something far more common and far more dangerous: pressure and the greed that comes with it. Emily had always been ambitious, almost fiercely so. She dreamed big, planned big, and expected life to move as fast as she did. When we first got married, we agreed on simple goals: save money, build a stable life, take things step by step. But somewhere along the way, the world sped up, expectations grew, responsibilities multiplied, and the pressure started crushing both of us in different ways. I worked a stable but modest job in a warehouse logistics company. The pay wasn't great, but it was predictable, and predictable meant safe. Emily, on the other hand, worked in a corporate office where promotions and bonuses were everything. Her salary depended on performance, competition, and constant hustle. And slowly, without us noticing, her entire personality started revolving around one thing: money. It wasn't that she loved expensive things. She loved security, or at least what she thought security was. She wanted the house upgraded, wanted a new car, wanted better furniture, wanted the next-level lifestyle we saw other families posting online. Meanwhile, I kept telling her that slower was smarter, that we didn't need to impress anyone, that we just needed to be stable. Those conversations always ended the same way. She sighed, nodded, and said nothing, but her silence spoke more than words ever could. Weeks before that 1 a.m. text, the tension in our home had started to grow thicker. Emily came home late almost every night, exhausted, irritated, and tightly wound. She barely spoke, barely ate, and barely looked at me. At first, I thought it was just work stress, corporate pressure, deadlines. But one night, she snapped at me over something small. Something so small it shouldn't have mattered. I had asked if she wanted dinner warmed up, and she exploded, yelling that she didn't have time for small talk about food. That wasn't her. Emily was never cruel. She was never cold. She was never indifferent. Something was pushing her far beyond her limit. Something she wasn't telling me. I let it go, thinking she just needed space. But over time, her behavior grew sharper, more distant, more unpredictable. She complained about bills piling up, about how slow my job was improving, about how we were falling behind. I reminded her that we were stable, that our savings were intact, that we weren't drowning, but she didn't care about stable. She wanted fast progress. She wanted the kind of financial leap she kept seeing around her in the corporate world. One evening, she looked at me with tired eyes and said, "We can't live like this forever." I asked her what she meant. She shook her head, sighed deeply, and walked away. It wasn't anger, it was disappointment. And that hurt more than any argument ever could. Then came the night before the text. Emily sat at the dining table staring at a stack of papers. I walked over, gently trying to ask what was wrong. She brushed me off at first, but when I insisted, she finally admitted what was really going on. Her company announced a new evaluation program. Only the top performers would keep their positions. The rest would face reduced hours or termination. Suddenly, her job wasn't just stressful. It was unstable. And she had been trying to hide it from me because she believed I would panic. Her words that night were filled not with anger, but with fear. She felt like she was failing. She felt the weight of everyone expecting her to be the financially stronger one. She felt the burden of living up to the image she believed our family needed. It wasn't cheating. It wasn't rejection. It was fear. Pure, heavy, suffocating fear. The next night, the night of the text, everything came crashing down. I had fallen asleep on the couch after finishing some paperwork. The sound of my phone vibrating woke me up. I rubbed my eyes and checked the screen. The message glowed sharply against the darkness. Emily, don't wait for me tonight. No explanation. No context. No reason. Something inside me told me this wasn't about staying late at work. This was emotional exhaustion. This was her reaching a breaking point she didn't know how to express. This was a cry of overwhelm, not disrespect. And instead of assuming the worst, I chose to respond with clarity. Calm, quiet, strong clarity. I walked into the bedroom, turned on the lamp, and opened the old wooden drawer where we kept important documents. Inside it were two things Emily had forgotten about: our early savings plan and the small photo album we made during our first year of marriage. In that album was a photo we had taken on the day we promised each other we would build life slowly, steadily, and without chasing the world's expectations. It was a picture of us sitting on the floor of our first apartment. No furniture, no decorations, just us eating cheap takeout and laughing like life was already perfect. I took that photo, held it up under the lamplight, and snapped a picture of it with my phone. Then I wrote one word beneath it. No. Not no to her staying out. Not no as a command. Not no as anger. It meant no. I'm not letting us break. No. I'm not giving up on us. No. I'm not losing my wife to pressure and fear. It was a reminder to her and to myself of who we once were and who we could still be. I sent the photo. For the next 10 minutes, my phone stayed silent. No typing bubbles. No response. I didn't know if she was shocked, confused, hurt, or relieved. Then finally, my screen lit up. Emily replied with a message I wasn't expecting at all. "Where are you?" I told her I was home. She said she was leaving the office and coming back immediately. Her tone had completely changed. The cold, distant edge was gone. It was replaced by urgency and something like guilt. When she walked through the door 30 minutes later, she didn't say a word at first. She just stood there, coat in her hands, staring at me like she was looking at a version of me she had forgotten existed. Slowly, she approached, sat down across from me, and placed her phone on the table. Her voice cracked slightly as she said, "I didn't know how much pressure was turning me into someone else." She wasn't making excuses. She wasn't hiding anything. She was admitting her own struggle honestly for the first time in months. But this conversation didn't fix everything immediately. It didn't magically erase the pressure or the financial stress she was drowning in. Instead, it opened the door to a deeper understanding. A realization that her late nights weren't about betrayal but about survival. Her emotional distance wasn't because of lack of love, but because she felt like she was failing. And now, she had reached the point where she couldn't pretend anymore. Before she could say more, I told her she didn't need to explain anything that night. She needed rest. She needed peace. We both did. But deep down, I knew something else was coming. Something bigger. Her job, her position, her future, and the weight of money, greed, expectation, pressure was about to reshape our lives in ways I wasn't prepared for. When I received Emily's late-night text, "Don't wait for me tonight," I didn't react with panic or suspicion the way she expected. Instead, something inside me finally went silent. Not broken, not angry, just quiet. Because after years of being dismissed, criticized, and talked down to, that message didn't hurt me. It confirmed everything I already knew. She had grown too comfortable disrespecting me, thinking I needed her stability more than she needed mine. But what she didn't know was that for the past 7 months, I had been preparing something she never saw coming. Not revenge in the dramatic Hollywood sense, but a careful, factual, unemotional mirror of reality that she would have no choice but to face. I had collected every bill, every bank statement, every loan I paid off, every grocery receipt, Every hospital charge, every insurance premium, every tax document, everything. She believed I didn't bring enough to the table, yet I was the one buying the table, cleaning it, repairing it, and keeping it standing. And that night, I realized this was the moment I would finally stop explaining and start revealing. I walked into the dining room, placed the thick stack of documents on the table, arranged them in order: mortgage payments, utilities, her credit card debts that I had cleared, savings accounts opened under her name, emergency funds I built, repairs I paid for while she slept peacefully. The sheer volume of evidence looked like a courtroom exhibit. I didn't need to raise my voice or argue. The truth itself was loud enough. I snapped a photo of the organized stack of papers, the lamp casting a dramatic shadow across them, and replied to her message with one word. No, that one word carried years of silence, exhaustion, and clarity. I wasn't waiting anymore, neither for her to come home nor for her to start valuing me. And for the first time, I felt a calm strength settle inside me that I hadn't felt in years. She came home around 3 a.m., unlocking the door quietly like she expected me to be asleep or ready to fight. But the moment she saw the lights on and the documents laid out like a financial autopsy, she froze. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I simply gestured toward the table and said, "Sit, read." She looked confused, almost offended that I wasn't reacting the way she assumed a husband should. She had grown used to dominating arguments, using loud emotional outbursts to drown out facts. But I had removed the emotional battlefield and replaced it with something she couldn't argue with: numbers. And numbers don't lie. She sat down reluctantly, flipping through the papers with growing panic. Her face changed slowly. First confusion, then shock, then shame. She realized every bill she thought magically disappeared was actually paid by me. Every repair she brushed off was handled by me. Every savings account she boasted about to her friends was funded by me. She wasn't the stable one. She wasn't the provider. She wasn't the responsible adult. For the first time, she saw the truth. She had been living like a guest in a home I was fully carrying. When she whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it showed how blind she had been. I told her calmly, "Because you weren't listening. You never listened." I explained how every time I tried to talk about finances, she dismissed me with sarcasm or changed the subject to what her friends' husbands were buying. She measured respect in handbags and fancy dinners, not in stability and responsibility. She wanted a lifestyle, not a partnership. But now that the proof was in front of her, she had nothing left to hide behind. I told her how her excessive spending created financial stress that she didn't even know existed. I told her how her obsession with status almost pushed us into debt multiple times. I told her how her disrespect chipped away at the foundation of our marriage more than she ever realized. And I said it all without raising my voice once. My calmness shook her more than any argument ever could, because she finally understood that I wasn't fighting for her attention anymore. I was finished. She began crying, apologizing, trembling as she tried to justify her behavior. But I didn't let her escape into emotional manipulation. I told her plainly, "Respect is not something you demand, it's something you earn." And she hadn't earned any. For years she treated me like a backup plan instead of her husband. She only valued the parts of me that benefited her image. She never recognized the weight I carried alone. And now that weight was sitting in front of her, printed on paper, undeniable. I told her I needed space. Real space. Not a break. Not a pause, but time for me to rebuild myself without her negativity. She tried to argue, but she had no ground left to stand on. The next morning she packed a small bag and left for her parents' house, crying as she closed the door. And for the first time in years, I felt relief instead of heartbreak. It wasn't revenge that comforted me. It was freedom. During the next few weeks, she texted me constantly, long paragraphs full of regret and realizations. She said she finally understood how much I had sacrificed. She said her parents confronted her about her selfishness after she explained why she was back home. She said she wanted to fix things, to change her behavior, to rebuild our marriage. But I didn't respond emotionally. I stayed focused on myself. I took a second job offer I had been delaying, enrolled in financial development courses, improved my skills, and invested in a small side business I had always wanted to build. Without the emotional weight she used to dump on me, I became sharper, more motivated, more confident. Within months, I was earning more than ever, not to prove her wrong, but to build a life where no one could ever belittle my worth again. Eventually, she came back not to demand but to genuinely apologize. She told me she finally realized how toxic her behavior had been. She admitted her obsession with money came from insecurity, not pride. She said she understood now that stability is built quietly, not flaunted loudly. And instead of expecting forgiveness, she asked how she could earn it. I didn't take her back instantly. I made her show responsibility, handling budgeting, contributing financially, stopping the reckless spending, treating me with respect. And surprisingly, she did change. Slowly, consistently, genuinely. Not because I threatened to leave, but because she finally saw what a real partner looks like. In the end, the revenge wasn't about destroying her. It was about forcing her to confront the truth she avoided for years. And the truth changed her, changed me, and changed the entire direction of our marriage. Respect finally replaced ego. Stability replaced fantasy. And for the first time, we built something real together.